Welcome to the Trainwell podcast, everyone. We're here to inspire you to move more, get stronger, and have fun. On today's episode, truly an inspiration. I love feeling rejuvenated by this conversation. It's very motivational. We're talking about the power of words and self-talk, and we bring on trainer Kara. And Kara is a coach who helps people get stronger in body, mind, and soul. She is all about power building, geeking out in psychology, and mixing in mind-body practices to create routines that actually work for her clients. With years of sports and training experience, she brings fresh strategies to the table to make everyone feel like a badass. Who doesn't love that? This conversation, she's a badass.
She is a badass. And listeners, I was talking to Darian earlier that I walked into this episode kind of a doubter. I was kind of, words and self-talk or woo-woo. I knew how important it was. But after this episode, I'm telling you, you're going to be recharged. You're going to be amped. You're going to realize how even words can impact the molecular structure of water. Stay tuned. As always, check out the show description. You can get a 2-week free link trying Trainwell out. And if you want to train with Trainer Kara, we're going to link that in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to see you on the other side. Adios. Miss Kara, give us the cherry and the pit.
So my cherry was last week, I apparently contracted the bubonic plague and I was sick. It's not actually, but I felt like it. And I haven't been sick since 2016. So I had a really bad fever, was feeling pretty awful, but that's the pit. And then the cherry is that I could finally get back to working out yesterday and it felt really good, a lot better than I thought. And my numbers were pretty much the same as when I left off. So I felt really good about that because I will start to go a little bit stir crazy after a while if I don't get my workout in. And it's one of those things where I need it more than I have to fit it in. I will fit it in, and when I can't get it in, I feel a little bit crazy. So that was my win. I felt really good yesterday, so feeling better.
How do you not get sick since 2016? Is this really how powerful words are?
Well, maybe so, because I always say knock on wood. If I say something about getting sick, I'm really superstitious. That as well as I really prioritize my health as well as my internal and external health. And I don't have any kids, so I don't have little walking germs all over the place, which helps.
Yeah, I will say I feel very strongly about my vitamin regimen. I don't know if you have one, but I just am convinced it works. Do you take any vitamins?
Only when I remember to. I have definitely super ADHD, so I have to have it in my face. But I do have other things that I'm really routine with. I really like to have a matcha, just traditional matcha, not with a bunch of milk and stuff in it, which I know has a lot of antioxidants. So I think I get my vitamins in a backwards way without having to take the supplements. But I kind of get my probiotics. I love kimchi and stuff and yogurt. So I'm a very I like the holistic approach if I can, but zinc and magnesium I do like to take in the evening because I know it's really good for sleep and stuff.
So will you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Because we're talking about the power of our words today. So I'm curious, how did that, how does that resonate with you? And how did you even get into that?
Yeah, so it's actually crazy because I was thinking about that obviously before thinking about this podcast episode. And it started really early for me, luckily. I always have had a really good, strong string of coaches throughout my life. I was an athlete my whole life. And not in high school was my very first coach. He was my strength coach. And he taught me about visualization, as well as if we would say that we can't do something, we would literally get in trouble, not trouble, but he would say what did you just say? And then he would make us reframe what we're saying into saying something that made it more positive for us. And he was my very first powerlifting coach because I'm a powerlifter. And so he would tell us to walk up to the bar and visualize ourselves doing it. And then also telling ourselves that we've already done it and that the lightweight, just pretty much telling ourselves that it's not as hard as we're making it. And that was my first experience with someone kind of opening me up to that. I grew up in a small town in South Dakota, so that woo-woo stuff wasn't really in our forte. It's very meat and potatoes. There was 100 people in my graduating class. So he was the first one to really introduce me to that. And then after that, I played soccer. So I had a college soccer coach who he told us to run our ESPN highlight reel. And I was like, this idea keeps coming up in my life. And so it's kind of like followed me for a while. And of course, when you're younger, you kind of overlook those things. But when you get older, you're like, let me figure out what's wrong with myself. And so that helped me really reframe some of like negative talk. I think especially as women, we are just really hard on ourselves, like physically a lot of the times. And so I ended up meeting someone who's one of my great friends. And she's like, why don't you just try every time you say something negative, try to say something like three things positive to kind of like offset, like reframe a little bit. And that was something that it takes practice. But after a while, it started becoming a lot more natural. And the way that it was explained to me was that if you're looking for red cars, you're going to see a million red cars, but you're going to miss all the yellow cars. And so it's the same way with like gratitude practice and positive and negative thoughts. Like if you're constantly looking for things to be negative about, you're going to keep being negative about stuff. But if you constantly are looking for things to be positive about, you're going to keep being positive about things. So it wasn't always how I was naturally to be positive bending, but it did take practice. And it's something that really did change how I see the world. And it really changed how I step into my professional life, just my daily life, and how I handle things like conflict within my life or myself, just like seeing it as something like, okay, where's the silver lining, and looking for the things that are more positive and feel better, because it doesn't feel good to be negative. And so that's something that kind of just became a part of my personality, is being a positive person. But it started a lot earlier for me than a lot of people. Just naturally, those mentors come to you at times you're supposed to have them, I suppose. But that's really how I kind of settled into this realm of like psychology, kind of. I didn't know the science behind it when I was younger, but as I got older, obviously started to see that there's true science behind it, and just really kind of fell into it. I really like that kind of stuff, and I love helping people. So knowing and teaching other people and how it changed my life, it's really cool to see other people start to kind of like trickle those little practices in. And that's kind of how I fell into all of it, like in a nutshell. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it.
Hey, so Darian and I were talking. I'm so glad to hear this background because right before you got on, we were talking, and I was like, D, what are we talking about today? And she said words. And immediately, Kara, I was like, kind of woo woo. I was
Hmm.
like this is, and you being an athlete, you understand this. Like, I was wrestling, like wrestler, right? And so I was telling Darian, like, when you lost, it was your fault. You couldn't blame anybody. And I remember our wrestling coach Doyle. I will say that he just taught us that. Like that was brought on because when you towed to the ring, like it was you versus yourself, you know. And anything you said that was bad, it was going to resonate. And I'll borrow a quote from Henry Ford. He said, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." And
Hmm.
so when we started talking, I was like, "Well, you know, this is just innate for me, but apparently a lot of people struggle with this. So
Hmm.
can you touch on that? Like, how important are words?"
Yeah, and I think that what you said is true as well. Some people don't resonate with that self-responsibility aspect of it as much, but that definitely is something that I think people struggle with in general. Is I think a lot of people struggle with thinking everything is outside of their control, and so really victimizing themselves and feeling like everything's always happening to me. Everything like life is happening to me instead of for me, or like seeing those little things, like maybe those things that do seem negative, like even on a smaller scale of like losing a match, for example. Like you could make that such a bigger deal than it needs to be, rather than saying like, okay, I lost. What can I look at that's not working for me, and what can I change? And especially for like women, I coach a lot of women, so I always reference them. But like if you're constantly trying to hate yourself into change, you've been trying to do that your whole life and it's not worked for you. So at some point you have to look at yourself and say like, okay, like why, like what is not working for me, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And to me that was language. Like if I would I say this to a friend, and if not, like is this helpful, is like are the things I'm saying to myself helpful, and can I change something about what I'm doing to myself to make the outcome better, rather than feeling like you're constantly out of control and just like things are out of your control all the time. That self responsibility aspect kind of helps reframe it and say like, hey, there are some things that are within my control. My language, the things that I do with my body and to my body are within my control. I can't control how other people react, or if someone else is better than me. I can't really control that, but I can control practicing on the things that I'm not good at, whether that be a sport or a hobby or even like the way that you talk to yourself. And a lot of times the shift between like someone who is successful and someone who is not successful is that the person who's not successful just stopped trying. It's not that this person has not failed as much as you or been through not as much as you. It's that they chose to take that responsibility for themselves and change something that wasn't working for them, even if that's something like big or small, whatever that could be. And I think people do struggle with that because they just are in that mindset of victimizing themselves. And I think there's a lot more of those people, and you kind of have to wake up to it yourself. Like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I think that a lot of people really struggle with seeing that they are a lot more in control than they think. And it just starts with little things. Like you don't have to completely do a 180 and change who you are and everything you do by tomorrow. But if you could start by maybe not bullying yourself as the first step to start feeling better, then that's 100% in your control. But they just have that illusion that they aren't in control of those things and that it's just who they are. You don't have to put yourself into that corner and completely identify yourself with being like, oh, I'm just a pessimist, or like, that's just how they are. I think there's lots of little things that people can change that are 1,000% within their control that they have somehow made feel like it's not in their control, whatever that may be. Everybody comes from a different background, but that's the one thing that I've noticed is that the things that we tend to make a catastrophe are things that don't need to be so. And it's a hard shift to make. I'll say that it's easier said than done for sure, and it takes practice, but most things that are worth change take practice. And if you've been this way for 10 years, you can expect to wake up tomorrow and stop bullying yourself. It takes time, and it also takes identifying it. So it takes time, like that observation period of saying like, okay, what are the things that I do want to change? And you may not notice them until you put that intention out there of like, same with the red car. Let me look for things that possibly aren't serving me anymore. If you don't make that intention with yourself, you may never come to the conclusion of the things that you need to change because you haven't brought your awareness to it yet. But I think that's the main thing is that people are really not very intentional with how they go about their days or their lives. And it really just takes like that one moment of saying like, I'm going to write down all the negative thoughts I have today, for example, and see how I can shift these things. Or you write the negative thoughts and maybe later in the day, you write how you can reframe those things. That could be a first step. And I think that's really what it is that people just don't think that they have any control over how they are or what they're saying or thinking. And my favorite quote is, you are not the thoughts that you think, you are the thing that observes them. And that helped me a lot to kind of help remove myself from the negative thoughts that we have, because a lot of those things are conditioned into us. Like we think that we were not skinny enough, for example, or not fit enough, or whatever story we're telling ourselves are really things that we've created in our minds. And we're the only ones holding ourselves to that label. Like your friend's not going to tell you that you're not skinny enough, you're not fit enough. Your friend's going to love you and think that you're amazing. And so you have to start being a friend to yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to perpetually go down that spiral of not being enough or not feeling enough or feeling stuck. And I think that's really like that awareness is really key in changing those things and not feeling like you're victimizing yourself constantly.
Yeah, I think that's like such a great point is like really focusing on what is within our control. And like Joey said, like he kind of initially was like, oh, this is just some like woo woo thing. But you had, in preparation for this, sent us some articles, like actual studies showing why and how words actually do matter and affect our tangible world. Can you kind of walk us through this water study? Because it really is a good demonstration of like, it's not just woo woo, it's real. I mean, I think that helps people really get on board with wanting to try something new.
Yeah, and I don't have it memorized verbatim, but I know enough to explain it in a way that everybody can understand and digest. And there's two studies that I think of, the water one that I told you guys about, and then there was another one that was in a book that I read that they used rice instead, but there was an extra step to that one, and I'll get to it. But essentially the water test is that they said negative things to this set of water. And of course, well, people may not know this, but water has a crystalline structure. And so they were looking at the crystalline structure between the two, the negative influence and the positive influence. And you can look up the images and see exactly what I'm talking about. And the negative influence, where they were saying negative things like hateful words, like negative phrases and things, the crystalline structures never properly formed and they just look kind of messy and muddled. And you can see that it's just not pretty like a snowflake, you know? And then on the other side, when they were saying positive things like speaking love into these water, I don't know if they had them in containers or what. And then the crystalline structures look beautiful, like snowflakes. They're well formed, symmetrical, and things you can see the stark difference between the two images when you look them up. And I fell onto this study because of that quantum physics presentation that I did when I was in high school, and seeing just how simple the words, the vibration of your words can impact things around you, not even just like the physical vibrations of me moving faster or slower, heating something up or cooling something down. And that was really interesting to me. And in my more recent years, I can't remember the book, so forgive me, but there was a book where it was about children. So interestingly enough, and they were talking about how saying positive things and negative things, and then also neglect. It was the third instead of just having the positive and negative. And the positive one it was rice and water. And so the positive one never rotted. And then the negative one was rotting, but not nearly as bad as the neglect one. The neglect one was rotting the worst. And so not only do negative things impact the thing, we all have water in our bodies. So I always think of it in terms of we're 70% water. And even if it has that impact on just the water within our bodies, that's still 3/4 of what we're created of. And so including if you neglect yourself and say negative things to yourself, they both have a negative impact. So if you ignore the issue, it's going to be just as detrimental as being mean to yourself, which I think is something that really important to note, is that it is that small effort of saying those positive things do make a huge change in just how things are put together and how things feel. And I even just think of it, if the science of it kind of goes over your head and you don't really care, if you think of it in terms of, if you just pay attention to how you feel when someone says negative things to you, or if you say negative things to yourself versus when someone says positive things to you, or you say positive things to yourself, you can feel the difference in your body. If someone says something that upsets you, you can feel it in your chest, or like for me, I feel like a pit in my stomach. You can feel the difference in the energy, even if you don't really have words to put to it. I always think of emotions as energy in motion. And so when someone says something positive, you feel great, and you can just feel the difference. And even if it's something small, and if you think of it in terms of how you feel, it's more relatable because everybody feels. And so I think that's a good way to put it if the science of it is kind of boring to you, or it just doesn't, you need something immediately that you can like tangibly feel or reference. That's a great way to put it. If you don't want to look into the science of it, you could feel it. And I think that alone should be a good metric of if you should or shouldn't be doing something often. Like, I'm not a huge fan of alcohol, but people drink, everybody says they'll get a really bad hangover and say, I'm never doing that again. But they do. And it's like basically poisoning yourself. And so I always think of like words can be that for us as well, and just impacting how we feel. And think of it as like a word hangover. Like you're just constantly giving yourself negative energy. So you're not going to feel great. And so that obviously impacts your motivation, the way you carry yourself through your work. It could impact how you come into a meeting or how we come into calls with clients. It can drastically change the route of that interaction. And it's just a simple like shift in how you see and view things, I think.
Okay, Kara, I'm still on this water rice thing. So you're telling me that 2 buckets of water, if I told one water that it like wasn't good enough, and I told the other water it was amazing, snowflake like me, the snowflake water like actually was better than the bad talk water? Is that
So
what
they
you're
look
saying?
at it on a molecular level, you know what I mean? So they can see the structure of things. But honestly, if someone wanted to experiment, I don't see why you couldn't. You would obviously have to make sure that they don't hear each other, however you do that. But you could probably speak to like a container with water in it and put it in the freezer. That's what I think how they got it to crystalline and be able to observe it a little bit better, and see for yourself if the structure of them freeze differently. And that would be an interesting way to actually see if you can see the difference. But if you are able to pull up the pictures, it's really worth looking at. It's like if you see the difference, and then I'm sure that they've done more studies since then. I haven't drastically looked into it, but that was enough for me because it makes sense to me, like in my mind. Some people need more of the science to like understand it or like see what's going on exactly. And I'm sure that they expand on it a little bit in the summary of the study. But yeah, essentially when you look it up, like the structures after they see them like molecularly were completely different from each other, which to me is really interesting. Just thinking of like the energy of a negative person versus a positive person. Like sometimes they don't even really have to say much for you to be like, oh, like this person's always negative, or like you can just sense it. And so I think it makes sense, and like you can feel what they're giving off in a sense, or how people say like the gut feeling. Like I think it could play into things like that as well, like the energy that someone carries around with them, kind of like trickles out in a sense.
You have to weave this into visualization, because that's one thing we as athletes are always taught.
Hmm.
And so talk us, like, what is visualization and how can we use it to stop this self-sabotage?
I want to
Yeah.
jump in for 1 second because I'm looking at the pictures right now and the article you sent, Kara. So
Hmm.
just for anyone who wants to know, it's Dr. Emoto, and the book he wrote was called The Hidden Messages of Water. So if anyone wants to look it up, you could do a quick Google search. The pictures are incredible. It's pretty amazing to see. So I'm a believer, it's real. And now on to answering Joey's question.
Yeah, so visualization, I think some people think, and this is a concept that has kind of been newer to me in the past couple of years. Some people think in images and some people think in words. And so visualization could work better for some people and maybe not so good for some people. I did not know that people can't see images. Some people can't see images in their head. So I could understand why sometimes visualization is harder for some people because they just see the words. And so the two definitely tie together in the sense that visualization is seeing yourself in the position, your ideal outcome. So you aren't going to like some people might visualize themselves failing and like don't do that, but some people might just because they lean that way. But visualization is essentially the the imagery version of saying affirmations to yourself. So you're seeing yourself do it. And so it's something about the brain kind of rewires to make that feel possible for you. And I know that Joe Dispenza, if anybody has listened to him, he talks a lot about visualization, and even, man, it's escaping me now. There's a few popular books out there that are essentially visualizing like your ideal life, like seeing things as like transforming your life in a sense. And so if you're seeing yourself in those positions, you're rewiring your subconscious brain to believe that that's a possibility rather than cutting off that possibility by, like you said earlier, if you believe that you can, you can. And if you believe that you can't, you can't. And the first step in accomplishing anything is believing that you can do it on some level. Like you have to believe that you can accomplish it on some level. And taking that and visualizing it actually happen is actually taking the next step, not just affirming yourself, but seeing in your head, like, this is how it would look, this is how it would feel, and thinking about how you feel is just as important in a visualization as seeing it. Because if you feel excited for that outcome, like I said, I think emotions are energy in motion. So it kind of leans you into that and gets you excited about it because you can see it happening and you can see how it'll play out for you. And especially with athletes, like with my coach, for example, he would tell us to see ourselves doing our max lift because we would max out every 6 weeks or whatever. And that actually helped me a lot. I would stand there for at least like 30 seconds before I would even touch the bar. And that was like a rule that we had, that we couldn't touch the bar until we do some sort of visualization, seeing ourselves do it. And then taking a deep breath and going for it. And like I said, just kind of rewiring what you believe you can do, because belief is the first step. And a quote that I actually saw recently that really stuck with me is, faith and fear are both belief in something that you can't see. And so picking something that is positive takes just as much energy as picking the thing that is negative. So why not believe that you can do something and visualize yourself doing it if that scientifically actually gets you to be better at this thing? Like, why not put the extra effort, if any? I think it takes just as much effort to be negative as it does be positive. You're just practice being negative for longer. And so it's a huge shift that helped me in multiple avenues of my life, even like visualizing myself doing good in a job interview, or visualizing a call going exactly how I want. And it just comes to setting that intention of, what is my purpose with this task? And it doesn't have to be something as big as a max lift or getting a job. It can be small things like how you start your day. Like, what is my intention? How do I want to feel today? What do I see myself doing today? How can I kind of walk myself through my day, visualize how I want to feel, whatever your goal is, saying like, okay, my ideal day would be that I do my morning routine, work goes amazing, all my calls go amazing, and just projecting the best for yourself is takes just as much energy as projecting the worst for yourself, if not less, because it feels better and you feel like you aren't constantly fighting against yourself and like beating back negative thoughts, and really just circles down to like, what's your intention? Like, do you want to do well in this? And if you do, then why are you kind of speaking negativity into the outcome, essentially. So visualization and how you say things both go hand in hand, because you can see yourself doing really well and hopefully falling into that path because your energy is kind of leading you in that direction. You've already seen what you want to do and how you want it to happen. And same thing with being negative. You could accidentally lead yourself down a negative path because you just are kind of self-sabotaging in the sense of like, let me see what else is going to happen today. Like, I bet this call is going to be awful, or instead of, you know what I mean? So it's just like you can lead yourself into a bad day by just simply not having the intention of having a good day. And I think it's really simple shift to make.
Yeah, that's cool. I actually really like that idea because of like waking up. This is like one tangible thing people can do. And I kind of want to shift into like, what are the practical steps someone can take? Because if you wake up and you think, okay, I'm going to do my morning routine and today's going to be a great day and I have high energy and I know I have this big meeting and I know it's going to go well, and really feeling what that feels like, it's like your car analogy. Like things might still not go well, but your awareness is on the positive of what is going well. Versus if you have wake up and you're fear and scared and nervous, you're going to notice all those things more.
Mm.
So I know you, in preparation for this episode, you wrote down some key phrases. Like, what are the key phrases that people tend to say? And then, like, how can they switch them to be a little bit more positive? Can you talk us through some of those phrases?
Yeah, and even if I just think, even not with the examples that I laid out, but just the ones that I can think of when I think of how clients talk to themselves, and it's always like, I never have time, or every time I try, I always fail. And those are the two biggest ones that I see. Like, nothing ever works for me is a big one, and that I'm sure you guys have heard as well. And shifting, like, this is something that I always tell my clients as well, is like, it's not about, like, you technically find clothes that fit you. You aren't supposed to just fit into clothes. You know what I mean? You want to find something that fits you. And it's the same way with exercise, where you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. You can find something that fits well for you. And I think that also comes with like how you speak to yourself. And like I said, it takes the same amount of energy to say something negative as it is positive. So one of the shifts, like a reframe, where if you say, I never have time, it's using never or should or whatever, all those words are kind of already speaking negativity into your task, whatever it may be. So I always kind of reframe it as like, instead of saying I should do this or I can't do this, saying, okay, it's possible that I can learn to be better at this, or I do have time. I just have to make the time or find what pocket of time. And most of the time when people say those things, they feel really overwhelmed, which is a normal emotion to feel. And so they just don't take the time to step back and say, let me reframe this. Like, where's the positivity in this? Where can I actually find time? Maybe it'll take a little bit of extra effort, like waking up a little bit earlier, but simple things like even just saying like, there is time. Where can I find it? You have to be in search of what you're looking for to find it. You can't just like hope that the time slot falls in your lap. You know, there does have to be a little bit of what I call like inspired action. Like, you can't just expect things to change just because you want them to change. You do have to kind of put a little bit of effort in, but being aware, I always say being aware is the first step. So if you're aware that you're having these negative thoughts, once you're aware of it, it's really simple to make that reframe. So whatever it may be. So if you're saying that you can't, saying like, I can try to do, if I can't do 10 push-ups, I can try 10 wall push-ups, or I can do, like, focusing on the things that you can do instead of all the things that you can't do is a really easy shift to make. And maybe it just means you have to shift and pivot. And I always like the phrase mastering the art of the pivot, just because you might think that you can try and do a pull up, for example, and then once you go for it, you're not going anywhere. So then you logically have to say, this plan is not working. So what new plan do I have to make? And what does that entail? So obviously believing that you can is the first step, and telling yourself that you can is the first step. And sometimes you have to catch it. I catch myself sometimes. I'll say like, I can't do that. Or I'll say like, let me not say that. I can do it. It will take practice. Like for you, for example, saying like, I don't speak Spanish yet. I always say that, like, someone will say something and they'll say, I can't XYZ. And I'll say yet. And that's a simple way to just like reframe that you can't do it right now, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible for you. But if you kind of cut yourself off at that I can't, like you said, you're kind of speaking it into existence for yourself that you can't, and you're going to start subconsciously believing that you can't. But opening yourself to the possibility of can is a huge, easy shift. Even if you just add yet to the end of something that you feel like you can't do, is a really easy way to shift that mindset.
Yeah, I actually read a book to my kids that a teacher, one of my closest friends who's a teacher, she gave this to me. It's called The Power of Yet.
Mm,
And it's all about like this little girl, she thinks she can't climb this tree, and reframing to her trying and trying and ultimately not being able to yet. And
mhm,
she decides to continue to come back day after day to keep trying to climb the tree. And I think it's so powerful for them to hear that messaging. And I was telling Joey before you jumped on the call today, Kara, my example of using this language was when I was in labor with my first son, and I was like screaming on the bathroom floor, literally going, I can't do this. I can't do this.
mhm,
And then remembering, because I took a birth class, the teacher saying to try to stay really positive and use positive language. And so then immediately out loud going, no, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And look,
mhm.
he's here in the world. So, I got through it. It was
Yeah.
hard. I did it.
Yeah, even if it's still hard, and I think that social media honestly is something that really muddles our mind in terms of what is possible for us. And we only see everybody's highlight reel, you know what I mean? Like if someone can bump out 20 pull-ups in a row, like that to us that may look crazy and be like, man, I could never do that. But we don't see that person training since they were like 15, just like hatching out push-ups or pull-ups or whatever else, or someone who really put the effort in to find a plan that worked for them to get to that point. And I think that's all, like I said earlier, the difference between a winner and a loser is that the winner just keeps going and the loser quits. And that's the only difference, is that you just have to keep trying and find something that works for you. And nothing come as much as we'd like it to. Maybe luck, we get something that comes to us easily, or maybe you're just genetically bent towards being really good at pull-ups. I don't know. But like I'm genetically bent towards being really
Yeah.
good at squats. So like that's my superpower in a sense, but everybody has things that they're naturally really good at and gifted at, just like there's things that you can pick up really easily and someone else might take a lot of time to pick up. It's just everybody's a little bit different, and so everybody needs a little bit different strategy to get to the same goal. Like not everybody, that's why I always say fitness is a lot of trial and error. Like you have to find the things that really inspire you and that you feel inspired to work on. Like if you have a goal to do a pull-up, for example, and you don't have the gusto to train to do a pull up and you expect it to change, like you can't just expect change to come out of nowhere and not work towards it unless it is luck or happenstance. And so there's just things that you have to do to break it down for a way that works for you. And that may be a little bit different than what someone else is doing, but you just have to find that pivot and figure out how you can make it work instead of just giving up on it.
Kara, can I talk about action? Because
Hmm.
like I love what you said. I wish I wrote it down. And I want to get back to that.
Inspired,
Yeah,
Hmm.
there you go.
inspired action.
Inspired action. So you get all riled up and you have all this self-talk and you have all this visualization. How do you motivate yourself then? Let's say it's something new, like starting a fitness routine or having a newborn or painting. Like you have to get in there and just get your hands dirty and do it, right? Like how do you have clients bridge that gap? Because I can name 10 people off the top of my head right now who, okay, we've done step 1, we've done step 2, but man, they're stuck in this fear, and I'll use your words, this procrastination purgatory. I love that.
Hmm.
How do you get these people off their keisters and moving?
Yeah, and I think that again, back to what I said earlier, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Like you could be the best coach in the world, you could have the most support in the world, you could be everything that this person needs, but they have to be the ones that want that first step for themselves. And something, a quote, I'm full of quotes, but
So is Joey. He has a whole
yeah,
book.
one that I really like, a lot of my background is in Buddhism. I really love the practice. I think it's beautiful and it can apply to everybody. And the
Okay, say
journey,
this quote slow so I could write it down.
yes, a journey starts with a single step.
Oh yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be the 5-minute version of the ultimate hour-long version that you want. But if you never give it the effort, like if fear is keeping you in a standstill, one, you have to ask yourself, like, is this something that I really want? And if it is, then what's stopping you? And if usually it's the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of being bad at something, but everybody was a beginner at one time, and we can attest to this even in our fitness journeys or any journey really. Like, you have to kind of suck at something to start to be good at it. And that's the worst phase to go through, but it's just a matter of the fact. Like, you can't let the fear of not being good at something keep you from even starting the thing, because then you're just sitting there wondering, like, what if I would have done this, or like, what if I would have stuck with this? And I think that that feeling of what if is so much worse than the feeling of maybe not being very good at something. And honestly, the hardest part is showing up. And once you start showing up, it's not as bad as you thought, feels a lot better than you thought. Maybe it takes a little bit of effort in the beginning, but I think anything worth having does. And especially if you're breaking down old habits, there's just certain things where you have to kind of pick your hard. Is it harder to stay the way that you are than it is to start the new thing that you want to do? And what exactly is holding you back from that thing? Is it fear? And if it is fear, how can you kind of small dose yourself into it not being as scary? Like, going to the gym for a lot of people is really scary. So it's like, okay, why don't we start with workouts where you can grab a pair of weights, go in the corner. You don't even have to touch the machines. You can just do what's within your comfort level to a certain extent. I don't think we can stay within our comfort level to make drastic change. And that's another thing that people, I think, have a misconception of. Like, there's some days where I'm loading the weight on the bar and I'm like, man, it sucks to be strong, because it just doesn't get easier. You just get used to it. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with anything. Like, yoga can be hard. Showing up to work for some people can be hard in some phases of their life. Like, there's certain things that are just hard, but you have to pick what you want to be hard. It's hard to be really uncomfortable with yourself, whether it be weight or just how you feel or just like the way that you operate through your day. That arguably is a lot harder than just waking up a little bit earlier in the morning and going somewhere I don't want to go. You know what I mean? So I would rather feel the hard of wishing I didn't have to squat 300 pounds than the heart of maybe not being able to walk or being too sick to do anything with my body. Like, and that comes to gratitude as well. Like, I'm really grateful I have the ability to start something new at this point. Like, there's some people who wish they could exercise or wish they could do something, and like, we're blessed with the opportunity to be able to show up and try. And if you don't try, you'll never know. And you just have to, at some point, you have to get, excuse my language for those who don't like it, but at some point you have to get sick of your own shit, and you just have to want it. And there's no one that can inspire you to do so. You have to be the one that feels inspired to take action, because I can't, as much as I wish I could, I cannot hold your hand through it. You know, there's certain things that do have to be done in independence. Doesn't mean that you can't have a great support system or people that you can rely on, or like us as coaches, you can ask us for extra accountability or just an extra boost or some positive words, whatever you might need. But you have to be the one to ask for those things, and you have to be the one to set the intention of the goal that you have for yourself. And then if you need extra love to get to that point, you let whoever know, whoever your accountability buddy is, and they can help carry you through that energetically. But you have to be the one that actually takes the action, because no one can literally do it for you.
Yeah, this is so powerful. It really is. And as you two know, because I told you I'm obsessed with the Telepathy Tapes podcast. So if anyone out there is not also listening to the Telepathy Tapes podcast, please, please, please listen, because they talk about how everything starts as a thought. Everything is a thought before it's a thing, before it's in the material world, before it's an action. It starts as a thought. And that's kind of like what we're talking about here. Like, the basis of that inspired action is the inspired part. It's the part where you have the thought, the desire, the will to keep going and keep trying. And I think it really is, maybe someone's not bought in after this podcast, but how simple is it to go from I can't to I can? Or like, I can't find the time to there's time. Let me figure out how it works for me best. They don't even have to do anything yet. All they have to do is change the thought. And you had mentioned something, and I wonder if you could go a little deeper into it, which is doing a word audit.
Mhm.
How could someone, like, if that is the first step they want to take, like, just let me see what my thoughts are. Like, how do they go about actually like sitting down and doing this like word audit and making that shift for themselves?
Yeah, and I think that, of course, obviously observation, and you have to set the intention that you're observing. Otherwise, it's really easy. And not like you have to get every single thing that you think, obviously, but just little things that you notice, or if you have someone in your household that could help you with that. Like, when you're working in a team, it's just a lot easier sometimes, because I think that that's what relationships are for, no matter what type of relationship it is that people see your blind spots. Like,
Mhm.
people are mirrors for us. And so don't be afraid to ask for help, but you have to get out of your ego to be able to say, like, hey, I notice I'm really negative. Like, and some people that may be really hard for them to admit. And that's admitting to yourself or somebody else is a really good step that you need to make a change. And if you don't think, it's kind of, my sister is a drug and alcohol abuse counselor, so that's where this comes from. But if you don't think you have a problem, you don't think that there's a problem that needs to be solved. So first step is admitting that you have a problem with something or that something's not working for you, and then saying, okay, so let me write down, even if you don't want to write down every negative thing, if you feel like that might be really not great for your mindset or whatever, saying like, okay, I'm going to write down 10 negative things that I say today. And no matter what that might be, you could write it in your phone. I highly recommend actually physically writing things down because it sticks so much better. And if you're ADD or neurodivergent in any way, if you put it in your phone, it's lost into the void. It's not going to happen. You're going to forget that it's a task. Write it on your fridge. I have a whiteboard. I'll write things on there somewhere where you can see it. So then you're reminded again of the thing that you're trying to do. And then it'll be like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be writing down my negative thoughts, wherever it is. I put a piece of paper on my kitchen counter, put a whiteboard on my fridge or on my wall. Those are all great ways to put it. And then also sticky notes were really helpful for me with positive things. And so even if I saw the positive sticky note, like putting affirmations on the mirror is a really good one. Some people like to write with expo markers on the mirror or sticking sticky notes anywhere that you would see it. I put mine on my door to leave my house, on my fridge, on my mirror, and even those three places alone, we probably see multiple times throughout the day. And that could just be a good way for you to start to reframe the things that you're saying and even notice maybe some of the negative things you're saying. And if you're looking for more positive things to notice, and that's a good way to do it. And if it's really hard for you to do that observation aspect, even just having a gratitude practice in the morning could be a really good step, even if it's just 3 positive things. Because again, it comes down to that red car analogy. If you're looking for more positive things, you're going to see more positive things, and you just slowly start to see the shift. And you can even start your day if you don't like the observation aspect, if you tend to kind of disconnect throughout your day, and that's just where you are, then maybe writing 3 negative thoughts that you've had in the past week and trying to reframe them and constantly working on reframing just those 3 thoughts for the week. Like anytime you hear yourself talking negative about, say, your body, saying, okay, I'm going to work on just focusing on this negative aspect or habit that I have, shifting that mindset. And once that feels more routine, then picking another negative thought to work on. Like, it doesn't have to always be in mass. And if it's hard for you to do that, maybe picking one thing that you notice really bothers you or that you don't want to think anymore. And even just thinking positive things, say like about your body, you start to do things that someone who feels positive about their body does. So I start to eat healthier. I start to go for more walks. I start to appreciate the things that I can do a lot more rather than just like sticking all these negative words and like labels onto myself. And so starting small, if the bigger picture is harder for you or that daily observation aspect is hard for you, I'm constantly thinking. So I'm very in my head and I'm always noticing like, why do I think that? And that's a good way to also get to the root of the problem. If you notice a negative thought, I use something that I call the why though method, where you just keep asking why though. Like, I I feel fat today, for example, and be like, okay, why though? Well, my shirt felt a little bit tighter when I put it on this morning. It's one of my favorite shirts that really made me kind of upset. It's like, okay, well, why is it fitting tighter? Well, I haven't been tracking my food lately and I feel a little bit like maybe I've been a little bit lax and I haven't been going on my walks. And it's like, well, why though? I kind of just fell out of routine, but I think it's something that I could definitely pick back up and then I'd feel a lot better about this. And then right there, you came to a solution about one thing that you already felt bad about. You know what I mean? So that's something that helped me a lot, is just asking why to everything. And some people may or may not have that capacity, but that's something that really helped me. And not even as far as like daily things. If even it's something where it's like, hey, every time someone mentions this topic, I feel really triggered. Why? And just asking yourself why and figuring out where the original thought came from. And I think sometimes people will be surprised how far back that original thought actually is rooted. Like a lot of times, like when I was younger, I was chunky, I was really cute, but I was a chunky kid. And so I had body image issues that stemmed from being bullied when I was in elementary school, you know, and it's like, I feel this way about my body because of something that was told to me by another 10-year-old. Like if a 10-year-old told me something now, I'd be like, rude, but okay, like I wouldn't take it to heart, you know what I mean? And so some of those things just subconsciously stick with us so long. We just never do that audit to figure out where this original thought was given to us or where this belief was given to us. And that's what if you've ever heard the term self-limiting beliefs thrown around, that's really what it is. It's something that was given to you, whether directly a thought or something that was kind of like halfway given to you. Like if you're a really loud and energetic kid and then you were taught that you were annoying because they would ignore you or tell you so, then you'll start to feel insecure about being super bubbly or loud, or you tend to be reserved. And it's like, well, what originally made me take that aspect of myself and kind of put it in a box? And then as adults, I think it's really kind of circling back to the things that no longer serve us. Like maybe at one point that task or that change served us in feeling safe, but we're adults now. And so figuring out like, is this actually making me still feel safe? Or is it just what I've told myself makes me feel safe, and it's actually now become something that's limiting me in some way?
Yeah. Yeah, this is awesome. And I know we're going to wrap up soon, but I think there's just so many ways, like you're saying, that people can use this. Like it really is so powerful. And I'm personally an intuitive eating person. I love intuitive eating. I help a lot of my clients with that. And one of the things they say in intuitive eating is that you have like the policing mindset, the observer's mindset, and the nurturer's mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things you can do is notice that policing thought, which is that negative thought about yourself or about food, whatever it may be. Just make it an observation. Use your observational voice in your mind to just make no judgment, just noticing. And then when you're ready, you can use that nurturer's mindset to
Yeah.
be positive. So it's like there's these phases of it. And you're right, it's not easy. I'm so glad you said that, because it's not easy to start changing your mindset if you're really rooted in negativity, but it's worthy of trying to change it and practicing it. And at very least, I think just noticing what you're saying with the audit. I'm just noticing what's going on, and then maybe you can start to feel more comfortable to actually make change. I'm curious, Joey, if you have anything else, but I know as we're wrapping up, Kara, if there's anything else you want to say that you haven't said yet that would really help people.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I want to touch on that gratitude journal because I've been gratitude journaling ever since I was 20. A mentor told me it. And if the listeners are like, gosh, pen to paper, it's amazing how powerful it is. And I remember I started off with 2 minutes of just something that either happened that was positive or something I'm grateful for. And then why, kind of going back to your why, though, it's so powerful. Now I'm always looking out for that red car, son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing too, the way that I started doing it is I would write 3 things I was grateful for in the same sentence structure. I am grateful for XYZ. And then I would write 3 affirmations for that day. So an I am statement. So like, I am feeling great during my work day, or I am really whatever, like anything that you can think of. It could literally be any topic, anything, but that's some more simple way. If like, I think journaling turns a lot of people off. I think it's also a very powerful tool, but I think some people is a little much for them. So that's an easy way. It takes you less than 5 minutes if you do the 3 and 3. And I think that's a really powerful way to start if you feel like there's too much observing. Again, like there's ways you can break things down to work for you. And that is a really powerful one. And circling back to what Darian said about intuition, a good measure for me has been that intuition is always affirmative and positive and not anxious or loud. And when you're feeling anxiety or a thought is giving you anxiety, or you're clinging to some sort of anxiousness with a certain task, it feels very rushed. And it's like, well, if you do this, this is going to happen, and this and this and this. And it like lists off millions of things that could go wrong. And that's definitely anxiety talking. And that's a good way to kind of notice things about yourself too, is like, does this thought feel good? And if it doesn't, then let me look at it a little bit deeper and figure out maybe how I can work towards this thought feeling better in the future.
I feel like this is like a good psych session, man. I'm getting pumped. I wish this can go on. And
I know.
I'm going to, I know I'm going to walk away with this with a huge, bigger open mind and appreciation for self-talk for anything, like doing your taxes or changing a diaper,
Doing
Like
your
how,
taxes. I
yeah,
love
but
doing my taxes. I'm
how
so
blessed are
blessed
you to have a job
doing
that
my
you can do
taxes.
taxes? You know what I mean? Like,
There you go. That's a
there's
good
people,
reframe.
yeah, and it's like it takes a second. Like I might be grumbling while I'm saying my affirmations, but it's just a way for me to try not to get into the loop of making everything negative, because it's really, you can really, like, you could see two people walk the same exact day. And if one person has a negative mindset and the other person has a positive mindset, but they do the exact same tasks, it really would put it in perspective about how much better that person at the end of the day who's positive is going to lay in bed and be like, how grateful am I to have a bed to lay in? You know what I mean? Like, there's people who, like, you just have to put it into perspective. Like, there's people who literally wish they could be in the position that you are. And at some point, we were in a position where we wish that we had what we have now. You know what I mean? And I think we forget that too. Like, there was a point where you wished you could have been started a fitness journey, or you could have never imagined yourself starting something, and now you're 20 steps into that thing that you wished you could have done, you know? So I think that's a good way to put it as well.
That was awesome. This was so powerful and so inspiring, and I hope that our listeners feel the same way. Thank you so much, Kara. That was awesome.
Listeners, thank you so much for listening. We know you're amped up now. We hope you guys realize how powerful that self-talk can be. Even just a simple word like yet can be. We hope you're amped as much as we are. And again, we always thank you so much for listening.
Now, after that episode, we want you to pick one task you've been procrastinating on and see if you can change the way you're thinking about it and start using more positive language.
Change the world, change the people around you. Be positive, guys. See you next time.
Bye.